And I'm going to dedicate this presentation to Jennifer C., who emailed me this morning. She has cancer. She's one of my blog followers, and she wrote to me and said that she's fighting cancer. So, Jennifer, you out there, this is for you. So, with that said, what we're going to talk about today is capturing great senior portraits. And we were talking earlier here that senior portraits aren't everywhere. So this is a good chance for you who live in areas where they're not popular to make them popular. But really what we're going to talk about is portraits in general and taking portraits of people. And I think that kind of translates across more than just high school seniors. We are talking about high school seniors, not people over 80, Carol. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the photography, and we're going to talk about how to make money at this. So without further ado, I do want to thank Canon for sponsoring this presentation, because if it wasn't for Canon, I wouldn't be here. So thank you. And I really asked Canon to sponsor this one because so much of what I use to take senior portraits is Canon equipment. It kind of made sense. So, and I'll talk about that as we go through here. We'll talk about the cameras and lenses and so forth. So before I go into all the details here, I want to start with this, keeping it simple. A lot of the times when you're at photo shows like that's going on in Javits down the street right now, there's people that are using large strobes and doing really stylized shoots, and they've got hair and makeup artists, and they'll spend 2 or 3 hours on the senior to get them all perfect before they do a shoot. That's not the way I work. So I keep it really simple. Usually when I shoot a senior portrait, they show up. They've already done their own hair and makeup. Sometimes they show up, but they barely do that. But we try to clean them up, but that's who they are. I want them to be who they are. So I don't do the really highly stylized. I don't bring 10 assistants with me, and I don't bring tons of strobes. It's really simple. And I'm gonna go through the equipment list and show you what I take. Because if you've watched my presentations before, you know that I try to keep it to minimal amount of gear and to keep it manageable. So that's what we're going to talk about. I want to show you a couple slides, a couple images here. This is one I just shot last weekend. And for this shot, it was one flash on camera. I used the sunlight. I had her lean down on this fence post, but we used the sunlight to light the back of her head. This is not strobes and other lights. This is just sunlight. And so it was just me and her taking the photo. And we're going to talk about posing later on, but this is just who she is. I just said to her, go ahead and just hang out on the fence here. This is another shot I did about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Peter's a really unique kid, and he didn't want to smile. He wanted to be a little bit more edgy, which I kind of had fun with. He also said to me when we took the pictures, he goes, "I really want horizontal shots." I'm like, I've never had anybody say to me that they wanted that way, because most time when we do portraits, we're shooting in portrait mode. I thought, okay, I'm game. So most of what we shot was horizontal with him, and it gave me kind of a new challenge as well, because we're so used to kind of turning that camera and shooting. But again, keeping it simple, this is just the sunlight that's coming from the side. I had him turn his face toward the sunlight and photographed. I did use a Canon 600 EXRT flash, turned way down. I think it was -2 stops, just to add a little bit of light to fill in the shadows on the other side of his face. And that's it. And again, the camera's on, or the flash is on the camera. And this shot here of Sydney, again, I placed her in an area where the sunlight was coming from the backside to hit her and rim light her hair. And again, I used a little bit of flash facing forward just to kind of fill her with a little bit of light, but I'm relying on the sunlight behind her to light her. One of the reasons I like to use the flash turned way down is it adds the catch light in their eyes. So if I don't use a flash, I won't get that little burst of catch light in their eyes. So it's on camera, simple shot like this. Same thing here. This is on camera flash, -1. So turned up a little bit brighter. Just put her in a good neutral background. Typically when I shoot portraits of any type, I like to have the background a little bit darker than my subject, so that you're looking at her and not maybe the leaves and things in the background. This shot here, again, on camera flash. This is my daughter and her good friend Jamie. We're at a local estate near my house, and we just had them both peeking out on either side of the pole and just shot it. Real simple. Nothing too harsh as far as bringing 10 different lights and things. So I talked about equipment, and I have a long list of equipment. It's actually longer than this probably, but what I did is I highlighted in red what I typically take with me. and I'm going to narrow that down even for you. I do have the Canon 1DX Mark II and the Canon 5D Mark IV. I do bring both with me, and sometimes I'll keep a wide lens on one and the 70 to 200 on the other. Most of the time I don't. Most of the time it's one camera and one is a backup. And usually it's a 1DX Mark II just because I can rotate it and have the button on both sides. But again, you don't look at the slide and think, oh, I have to have a Canon 1DX Mark II to take senior portraits. You don't. You can do this with an 80D or whatever you want. So I do carry two cameras, again, as a backup. The lenses, even though I have a bunch of lenses, the ones I use 95% of the time is the Canon 70 to 200 2.8. Love that lens. It's wicked sharp. And for me, the perfect portrait lens. I do take the 24 to 70, and I'll show you a couple images that I took with that for a little bit wider shots or if we're in a tight spot. I do take the Canon flash, and then sometimes, and I'll show you some examples where I actually do use multiple Canon 600D XRTs. So I'll take either one or two and use them remotely. I do have four. I don't take all four with me. And Tiffin filters, I use the Tiffin UV filters on the front of my lenses, but again, just one filter on front of a lens. And I've got my memory cards, and I use a Black Rapid strap. So a lot of people look at this list and say, gee, that's a really expensive list, which it is, but that doesn't mean you have to have all of that for portraits. I would recommend the 70 to 200, at least one flash, whatever camera body you're using, memory cards, and you're good to go. So I know years ago I did a presentation here called shooting portraits with minimal gear, and I listed all this stuff, and people are like, that's not minimal gear. And it wasn't, but again, it wasn't to say you have to take everything with you. All right, before you capture the photos, when you're doing senior portraits, one of the things we like to do is determine things up front with either the senior or mom or dad. So for one is we want to determine the location. So many times I'll get them asking me, where should we go? What should they wear? Is very common. So one of the things I want to do is find out who they are. So you'll see the third point is learn about the senior. I'll ask questions like, well, okay, so what is Sydney into? Is she into soccer? Does she like to read books? Is she into acting? Whatever. I want to know who they are. Right? Are they formal or informal? What do they normally wear? Do they wear jeans to school every day or dresses if it's a girl? If it's a guy, is he wear shorts all the time, or does he like to dress up and wear sweaters or whatever? I want to know who they are. And I try to keep them in an outfit that is who they are, because if you take someone and put them in, if you put me in a three-piece suit or a tux, it's not pretty. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself because I'm dressed like this. My wife says I need to have granimals just to get dressed. So we want to know who they are and then find the proper background and location for them. So we have locations near my house, like this old winery, which you'll see, which is really cool with old rustic wood and stone. I do a lot of portraits there, not just senior portraits. There's a local park that'll work that's got good greenery and trees. And then other times we'll go somewhere more specialized. So you'll see a photograph coming up of one kid who's really into baseball. He's a very good baseball player and hopefully will make the majors. So we did some shots at Stanford University and then went over to his field at his high school, and we shot pictures at the ballpark there at the Diamond. So this is all determined in advance so that I can kind of pre-think the shots that I want to get. And again, as far as outfits, I want them to dress according to the way they are, but I usually encourage them to bring 2 or 3 changes. Something, like let's say it's the baseball player. We had him wear his baseball outfit, but also had him in a suit and tie. So we started with the suit first, in case he got dirty in the outfit. So then I change out of the suit and into his baseball outfit. Then if he got a little bit of dirt on him, I didn't care, because then it would just look like he slid into first base or something. So I try to get as much information about them as I can. I find out if they have a vision. So a lot of times they'll call you and they'll say, here's what I want. Which is great if they have that kind of direction. So if I can get that out of them, that's great. And I'll say like, okay, what are you thinking? Well, we're really thinking about doing it here in this local park, or maybe there's an area that's special to them. Like the kid with the baseball, he wanted to shoot at his high school Diamond because that was really important to him. He spent 4 years there. That's where he learned a lot. He really liked his coach. He's like, that field is special to me. I said, let's go there. Let's not go somewhere else. Setting time expectations. So part of this presentation is about making money at senior portraits, and of course time is money. So one of the things as photographers, people forget that it's not just the shooting time, right? There's a lot of other things that are involved, but you want to set expectations. Spend 20 minutes on the phone with them to figure out location and dress, and then 2 hours shooting, but then you also have to do your post-processing. So I'll tell them when we're doing senior portraits, okay, we'll probably be out there for about 2 hours or 2.5. And I'll set it accordingly, if I can, to sunset. So we're gonna, if the sun sets at 6:45, let's start at 4 to 6:30, and maybe if we run a little late, we'll run right up to sunset. Setting pricing is always a tough one, and I get tons of emails from people saying, what should my pricing be? And it really depends on your area. So if you're here in New York City and it's more expensive to live here, and you have to travel farther to get to a place, maybe to Central Park to go shoot, and that takes more of your time, maybe you're going to charge more. And so it's really going to be based on time and your geography and how good you are. If you've done a lot of senior portraits, maybe you can charge more than if you're first starting out. So when people email me and say, what should I be charging? It's always a tough one to answer. So just to kind of take you through some of the locations, I mentioned the winery. This is one of the oldest wineries in the U.S., happens to be about 15 minutes from my house. And I love shooting there just because it's such a cool environment. I love the old wood and the old stone. This photo here was taken at Stanford, and this is the boy I was telling you about who's the baseball player. So it's funny, when I posted this to social media, someone said, is he a senior from high school or college? Because he actually looks pretty old, but he is a high school senior. And we took this at Stanford. It's a great location for shooting, and you'll see I like to use repeating patterns. It's a really cool shot, so I did shoot this horizontal. This next shot is also taken at Stanford, and this shot is, again, shot vertical. But what I wanted to show you is this location. So Stanford University, this is literally about 25 steps from where the other shot was taken. So one of the things that I'll do is I will look around or get there early and look at light and say, where else can we shoot? About 50 feet from that location was this location where I got up on a wall and looked down on her with a 70-200 and shot that and kind of used the leaves as kind of a frame for her. And again, all of this was within probably 100 feet of each other. This shot, and that shot. And so one of the things you want to do is not only pick a location, and we're going to talk about this a little later, but find locations within that location that work. This is my daughter. It's one of the rare times my daughter has ever said to me, hey, Dad, can we go shoot photos? Because it just never happens. But she saw this field of mustard flowers, and this is when she was a senior in high school. She's now a junior in college. And she says, Dad, can we go out to that mustard field and do photos? So I took her out there, and again, just used one flash, relied on the sunlight behind her, and took the shot. When you're on location, even though you've picked one, this is a good time to get to know your subject. So the last point here is where I say kind of do some warm-up shots. As I'm taking warm-up shots, I'm actually also talking to that person and finding out, do you like this? Do you normally stand like this? Or if I tell them to pose a certain way and they don't feel comfortable, I can feel that. Like, you don't usually stand like that, do you? No. Okay, so let's try. What would you normally do? And this is where we kind of get to know each other. If I don't, and a lot of the seniors that I photographed, I've known because they're friends of my kids. The ones that I don't know, it takes a little bit more learning. So what I'm doing is when we get to Stanford or a park and we start shooting, I'll find out what they like, and then I'll move accordingly to whatever kind of fits them. So if they like leaning against things, I might choose more trees for them to lean on, or fences or whatever. So I'm kind of finding out about them as I go. And of course, this next bullet point is probably one of the most important ones, and that's find good light. So whenever I shoot somewhere, I try to get there a little bit early so that I can scout out lighting. If you take something like Stanford University, I've been there many, many times, but the light is changing all the time, right? Depending on time of day, time of year, what the weather is that day. So I'll get there and I'll look and I'll say, that's interesting, that might work. And so when we just did the shots of Peter last week, or a couple weeks ago, this is a park near my house, and he and I were walking around just looking for good shots, and I noticed that the sunlight was coming through the trees and kind of hitting the side of this tree. So I said to Peter, so why don't you go back up to this tree? So he's kind of standing in dirt area off the side. And I backed him up so that it was rim lighting his hair, but of course it wasn't hitting the tree, which I wanted. So it created that rim light. I'm adding a little bit of fill light from my flash on camera, and there's my shot. And again, I had him lean against the tree, which really worked for him. And I had him put his hands in his pocket. Although I'm not sure if I even had him do that or if I just said to him, hey, lean against that tree. Which is one of my favorite things to do with seniors, is I'll say, if you were just hanging out here, how would you stand? If you were just with friends, what would you be doing if you were standing by this post? And then when they stop and stand and do that, I'll take a couple shots. It may or may not work in camera, but I'll let them do it to start. Then I'll say, you know what? Can you do the same thing, but just move this hand up or whatever? And they'll start mixing them up a little bit. But I like them to be themselves, and that's one of the good ways to do it. I will say that one of the reasons I get hired to photograph events and portraits is people tell me I have an uncanny way of capturing who those people are. And again, that's not trained. I don't try to do it. I'm just a ham, and so I talk a lot to people, and I kind of bring that out of my guests. But that's really the goal, because as photographers, it shouldn't be about who we are. It should be about who they are, and capture that essence. So I shot this picture of Peter. We started walking up the path no more than about 10 feet from this spot. And I saw the sun coming through in a really dark background. So I had him stop. And he actually did that pose, and I shot that. Again, that's sunlight coming from the back. You can see because it's not lighting not only his hair, but the side of his face. And then again, I'm using the flash on camera to add a little bit of fill so that it's not too much darkness and shadow on the one side. This shot's the opposite. So this one here, we had harsh light behind him. Here we don't. Here it's very flat light. So good neutral background, which is what I tend to look for. I'm shooting at f3.5 or between 2.8 and f4. So here I was probably around 3.5, so that the background has all that bokeh. It's very soft. On camera flash, -1. And I said, just tip down a little bit, have some fun. And he gave me that shot. But very different lighting than the previous one. This shot is direct sunlight in my backyard. We had shot portraits of her. She didn't have a lot of time. We just sat her down. My wife was nice enough to plant really pretty flowers in the back. And I just kind of had the sunlight coming in from the side and just took the shot. Very, very simple. And again, the one we just shot last weekend, this is at the old winery, and I saw the sun coming through. And actually, we were doing portraits of her on the other side of this barn, and her mom was standing there with her purse, and I took pictures of her mom. I said, wow, the light is really pretty there. So I took pictures of mom first, and then I said, get out of my shot, and moved the daughter in and shot pictures of her there. Again, using the sunlight behind her to backlight her. Same girl on the flip side of the barn where I didn't have the direct sunlight. And this is, again, very flat light. A little bit of extra light on the side from the sun that's on the far side coming across her face. She's a soccer player. She's going to Rice. So we changed outfits. She put her future college sweatshirt on, and she brought a soccer ball with her, and we took that shot. The one thing I should mention, going back for a second, we had the sunlight here. We shot for about 2 hours. So I knew that I only had limited sunlight for about maybe 45 minutes, and then we'd lose it because there's a big hillside there. So I tried to aim for all the sunny spots first, and then we went back and shot in the areas once the sun had cleared out. Because the problem with this spot earlier, if we had done it first, is I had a spotty specular light coming in behind her, and it would have ruined this shot. So I'm thinking through as I'm shooting where we're going to come back to if I need to. This shot here is something a little different, and with this shot, we were just about done for the day. You could tell the sun was leaving us, but I saw the sun peeking through the trees. I had her hop a fence, and she stood there for this because I love the sun backlighting her hair. But I changed the camera to f16, and then I moved so that was just peeking through the trees and got the starburst effect. So again, just trying something different. I did use a flash on camera. You could see I'm kind of lighting the greenery around her a little bit with a flash, but otherwise she would have been more silhouetted. So I was adding full power on the flash on camera straight out. But again, by using f16, I get that starburst. If I shot this at f4 or 5.6, I wouldn't get that. So when you're capturing the photos, there's some things you want to think about. Some of the basics. Focus on the eyes. I get a lot of people that send me photos and they say, hey, what do you think of this one? And the eyes are soft. Typically, if you're doing portraits, you want the eyes in focus. So I'm almost always back button focus on the eye and then recompose and shoot. For those of you out there who have never used back button focusing, if you go to my website, jeffcable.com, under the videos, which is under About Videos, you'll see a video there on back button focusing and how to set it up. But it's a great way to turn focusing off your shutter button and onto the back so I can pre-focus right in the eye and then recompose and shoot. We already talked about complementary backgrounds, so you want to find good backgrounds in any location. And again, sometimes it means moving them, sometimes it means moving me. So in the case of the shots of Peter, we had that backlight. I'm moving him a little bit, and then I'm also repositioning. 2 reasons. I want a good background. I also want to keep the sun off the front of my lens. And there's times I'm shooting with that direct sunlight coming and I'm getting lens flare. Some people like that as an effect. I typically don't, so I'll try to either shade the camera or have someone help me shade it. And so I'll move a little bit. And don't always shoot everything centered. Go off center, try some things that are new. And I'm gonna show you some of the wacky things I've done with seniors to try to have some fun. So find the good light or create the light. Know if you have to use flash or not, kind of find the cool direct sunlight, but have fun. Because these are seniors in high school. They want to have fun. They don't want some stoic photographer going, okay, now smile, right? And have fun with them and find out more about them. And when you engage with them, that's how you bring their character out. Okay, shoot raw. I always shoot raw. People ask me, why don't you shoot RAW plus JPEG? Because I don't need to. If I need to convert a RAW to a JPEG, I can do so in seconds. So I shoot everything raw, and I always shoot to 2 cards. My camera, all of my cameras have 2 card slots. I always shoot everything I shoot to 2 cards, just for safety reasons. You want to determine optimum lenses. And I tend to think about this in advance. It's so funny because a lot of times I'll bring my big bag of lenses and I live on the 70 to 200 almost the entire shoot. It is my favorite lens to use. So I want to show you a couple shots. This is a tight shot of Kendra. And this is at a different location that's near that winery. And this is with a 70 to 200 shot at 2.8, focused on her eyes at 200 millimeters. And then we went up to the winery and we shot, and this is shot at about probably 100 millimeters. I get a little bit wider than before, have a little bit of fun with her. And then I actually switched to the 24-70 and did a different shot. Now, I as a photographer have a certain style. My style tends to be much more up close and not really wide dramatic shots. If you follow someone like Sal Concata, Sal does very, very wide shots. This is more like what he would do or even wider. And I typically don't do that, but I wanted to do something different and have some fun. And because this background is so cool, it kind of worked, and I said, let's try something different here. Okay, you want to think about the flash and lighting. Again, you have to work with what's there. So you want to think about, do you need to add light? Can it be on camera, off camera, or even maybe just using a reflector if needed at all? And I'm going to show you some examples of that in a second. And I'll determine what kind of depth of field I want. Do I want to show everything, you know, like that one F-16 shot with the starburst and all the trees and everything was in focus? Or do I want the shot that I just showed you of Kendra at 2.8 where the background was all blurred and it was really just her? And I put parents to work, one of my favorite things to do. So they're there. Typically, it's a good thing to have a parent there, especially if it's a female. I actually prefer to shoot with a parent there, or my wife, daughter, whoever might be coming along. But I put them to work for 2 reasons. One is it keeps mom from trying to direct. And you'll get this a lot with you know, Kendra, that's not the smile we taught you. I hate that. I'm like, Mom, I got this. You're like, go away. So a lot of times I do is I'll say, hey, let me have you hold the flash. That way they're off about 45 degrees from me, about 10 feet away, and I can work with the kid. But it actually is great because it gives them something to do, and they actually learn about lighting, which is kind of fun to teach them. So if we look at Kendra in this shot, I actually had, I think her dad was with me for this one, and holding the flash, and we had him off the side. You can see that it's not on camera because the shadow is going in one direction here. So I'm using the Canon 600 EXRT flash, which is so cool because it has wireless, so I can have them talk to each other. So I'll have one on my camera, one remote. The one on camera I sometimes turn off, and so it's just communicating to the remote, or I may have both on if I want, but I'm using directional light to put a shadow on the far side of her face and to create the shadow going across the wood. I don't want it to be directly behind her. And the shot with Peter, I had Jill, his mom, with me, so I put Jill to work, and she's holding the flash on the other side of him, going this direction, because we saw this old wall. I've never shot there before. And again, he's got that leather jacket, kind of edgy look, and I said, let's have a little bit of fun here. So I put her off the side and shot and used that shadow. And again, what's cool about this is right by that same park by my house, never shot by this white wall. But because he's different and wanted a little bit edge, I thought that's kind of cool, let's try it. So part of shooting differently is for them, and part of it is for me. Because I'm very, very ADD, if you can't tell. So I like to change it up a lot, keep it fresh. And this here is also the mom using the flash. So we had that sunlight coming in. I had her add a little extra to this shot. So we popped a flash also, because I think we were losing light at that point of the day. And then I had my light on, going straight onto him, turned down a little bit, again, because I don't want to blast him. I don't want to light the entire face, because then it looks like it was flashed. I want the directional light to go from light to shadow. So this is true for outdoors or indoors. Yesterday, here in New York, I was shooting for one of my corporate clients, and we did all their headshots. Same thing. I had one main light with an umbrella, and then we used a white poster board or a foam core sheet that my wife was holding and bringing in or out depending on how much fill I needed. So the main light was coming this way, but then I go maybe too much shadow. So I'd ask my wife, can you come a little closer with that white card? And then that would bounce the light and relight this side a little bit more. But I don't want two lights going and just have complete light, then it's not as interesting. This one here is looking at me. Again, this is two flashes. This is a remote from the side and me shooting straight. But this is a good example of going from light to shadow and adding depth. By the way, and this isn't true for Peter, but if you have someone who's overweight, this is a great way to slim someone down, is go from light to shadow, because then you're really looking at only half of their face. It tends to slim people a bit. This is a senior portrait I did many years ago, and this is mom holding a reflector behind her and adding that light to her that wasn't there. So the light was far away. I had her holding a circular gold, I think it was the gold silver side, kind of pointing at her daughter, just like I did here. So I had her daughter, this is the same winery. I had the daughter sit down by the sun area, but it was not enough, and I had mom holding a reflector. This is no flash at all, and this is just that gold side of the reflector lighting her. And it really works because it lights her face and her eyes and brings out that really kind of great color in her skin. This shot I did also years ago. This is one of my daughter's best friends, Billy, who passed away last year in a tragic accident. And this shot always makes me sad, but I included it because he was one of the best kids, one of our favorite friends of our kids. And it was such an honor to do his senior portraits, because he actually was really into photography and ended up second shooting for me, and actually primary shot one time with my daughter. But I did this shot because I saw the sunlight on the plants in front of him and said, hey, Billy, go behind that and let's shoot this way. So I used the sunlit plants as a subject, or as a kind of a, he's my subject, but as a foreground element to kind of make it more interesting. So my mind looks at light all the time when I'm shooting, and what can work and what doesn't work. That was actually at Santa Clara University. This is the baseball player I told you about. This was his vision. He said to me, I saw a baseball card one time where it was this really dramatic light on this guy, and he's sitting in the dugout. And I said, we could do that. So I turned my camera to manual and basically killed all ambient light. So this is a flash that Dad's holding about 10 feet from me off to the side, pointing at his son. I told the son, don't even look at me, kind of look out toward the field, hold the bat. And then literally, if you take this photo without the flash, it was black. Because there was one time the flash didn't go off, and I killed all ambient on this shot. So, and the way you do that is you set a real low ISO, You set your aperture to something like maybe f11, and a shutter speed that's fairly fast, and those settings will then get rid of all ambient light, and then you start adding light in, and that's what we did here to make a dramatic shot for him. Now this shot is a remote light behind Sydney. This is my wife, who was actually at the park with us, and she was holding one of the remote lights. And so Sydney goes, we shot this and I saw the sunset behind her. Now the sunset wasn't this dark. But again, what I did with the camera is I went to manual mode and I metered it and then shot at a faster shutter speed to make it artificially darker than it was. And I wanted the faster shutter speed so that when she jumped, I could freeze her in place. Then I had my wife Annette go behind her with one of the Canon 600 flashes and go far enough back that we don't see her. She's pointing the flash at the back of Sydney and we're firing. So you could see where the light's coming from because you could see it on the grass, but you don't see my wife at all in the shot because she's behind the flash. And it's possible that in the shot you might have seen a little bit of her and I took it out, which you can do in Photoshop if you need to, but I don't think I did. Okay, posing. As I mentioned, I like them to pose naturally. I see a lot of photographers that pose people in very weird positions. And I don't know about you, but I can look at a photo and I can say, you know what? That just doesn't look like they feel comfortable. And I've done this in the past with some kids where you put them in a suit, mom wants them in a suit, and I take their photo, you could tell that that's not who they are. I'll never forget this one kid, he was 13, I was doing pictures for him for his bar mitzvah, in advance of his bar mitzvah, and we had shot over and over in a suit. I didn't get great shots of him. The day was just about over. He was done. He took off his suit. He put a sweatshirt on. I showed that shot at other presentations here. He put his high school sweatshirt on, or his elementary school sweatshirt, whatever it was, and he leaned against the post and was like, oh wait, that's you. And I shot that shot. And that was one they used, because you could just tell that's where you felt comfortable. So I try to pose them, and like I said, I'll say to them, how would you stand? How would you just hang out there? Make it age appropriate. I do see a lot of senior portraits that I kind of feel are a little questionable. We're guys and we like girls to look sexy, but I don't know, a high school girl, maybe not. So I try to think about that, make sure they dress appropriate. Again, that's more up to them than me. But I don't want them to look like a supermodel per se or get too risque. That's just not what I want. Again, some photographers do. But my kind of theory is I want to keep them age appropriate. I mentioned watching those hands, and I've shot for 15 years, the hands are still something I watch really closely because, boy, they can really make or break a shot. This happens all the time when I do group photos where you get someone who puts their hand on the person next to them and it's their hands coming up over their shoulder and it feels very natural, but it looks horrible. My wife, who works with me during weddings, she usually yells, claw, isn't that what you yell? Claw. Which means like it looks like we got a claw sticking out over your shoulder. Please move your hand behind the person so we don't see it. Unless you rest it gently on a shoulder. If it's either parent on either side, put their hands on the shoulder, that can work. But the whole hand over the shoulder doesn't work. And so I try to watch those hands very closely to make sure they're in a nice, relaxed, natural position. And I'll show you some examples in a second. And as I mentioned again, keep it fun. Most of the time when we're done shooting senior portraits, the kids say to me like, wow, that was a blast. And they'll start out by saying, I'm really nervous. I've never had a professional photo taken ever. The girl that you saw that I just did last weekend, she came to the house with her mom. She's like, I've never done this before. And by the end of the 2 hours, she was great. And part of it is turning the camera around and showing them what you're getting. Don't forget to do that because that builds the confidence. Oh, wow. She said that at least 10 times, like, ooh, I really like that shot. Oh, cool. Then she knows that the rest of the shots you're taking, you're going to make her look good. You now own her. She has that confidence that you're not going to make her look bad. She'll give you more for the rest of the photo session. Same is true of the boys. Anybody, old people, young people, I always turn the camera around. Look, I'm making you look better than you think. Right? And if they have acne, don't worry, I'll take it out. I said that last weekend, and the girl's like, oh, you made my week. But I have fun. I'm a nut, as you can tell. So I have fun when I'm out shooting, and I make sure that they understand that and feel that. So talking about hands and posing. So I had her in that winery, and I said, like, if you were hanging out right there, what would you do? And she actually did most of that herself. I just had her change her hand position just a little bit. But she looks very relaxed and she looks very comfortable. And that's very much who she is right there in that shot. This is my nephew. If I don't know what to do with their hands, I'll ask them to cross their arms like that and do that shot. I do that quite often for people because it gives them a place to put their hands, and I like it unless it's not them. I did this with one of the kids recently, and I said, cross your arms, and boy, that did not work. It was one of the rarities. It didn't work in my area. This is not working, so don't do it. One I did a long time ago, same thing, crossing the arms. Sometimes maybe change rules altogether. They were having fun, and they kind of were doing that on their own. I said, do that one more time for me, have some fun. Just, and that's what they did. Great place for the hands. Don't have to worry about them. Again, same girl in Stanford, and I actually didn't want her legs too straight. So I said, kick your foot up on that post a little bit. Just changing up just a little bit. And she actually put her hands behind her. I didn't even have to tell her to do that. So again, I'll go off of what they're doing and shoot, and then maybe change it up. Again, Peter recently, and that one there I actually did ask him to put his hand in his pocket. He had the ripped jeans, wanted to do that. So I'm like, all right, we'll go with that. Be creative. Don't get in a rut. Don't shoot everything the same. One of the things I do is I shoot very tight. I shoot at 2.8 or f3.5 quite often. And so I tend to get in that mode where that's all I'm shooting. So one of the things I want to do is change it up a bit. And I'll do that as much as I can. So every time I shoot, I try to change something in either my own mind or ask them, hey, you want to do something different? And they'll tell me. So in this case, we had photographed Sydney at the winery that you saw in the park. She came over. Her mom and her really wanted to do this glitter shot. And this is the colors of her school colors from where she was graduating. And so we didn't have time the day we were doing it the first time. They're our neighbors. They live like a mile from us. They came over the house. I set up a black backdrop in my backyard because I really didn't want tons of glitter all over my house. And so I set up a black backdrop, and we did a couple trials with her. First one we did, we had her blowing and she got back in her face. We ended up with glitter. I had to go over and with tape and try to take all the glitter off her face. And then we tried again, and we were trying with different colors because I didn't want to blow all of our blue and gold until we had this down to a system. And then I said, okay, go a little bit farther back, blow harder, and try to look at me, because the first time her eyes were closed and she was looking away. I said, you have to look at me. I said, okay, we're going to do one shot. We dumped all the blue, all the gold in one shot, and I said, make it count. And she did, and that's what we got. And so it was something very different for me, and I'd never tried it. It was really fun. And for this shot, I actually took one of the Canon 600D XRT flashes behind her to try to backlight the glitter, and then I had mine going at her. So I had one going this way at her at -1, and the other one coming from her back. I believe that was actually at -1 as well. TTL mode to get the shot. Fun to do. This is one again with my daughter and her best friend. This was my wife's idea because she's the clever one in the family. And she said, let's take some Scrabble pieces. We laid them out there to spell seniors. Now for this one here, I broke my rule that I told you, make sure you focus on the eyes, because what should the focus be on? This one is doing something different. We're focusing on the letters, not the eyes. So again, if it's a cognitive thing where you're saying I purposely don't want to focus on the eyes, okay, fine. I could have shot this at f16, had both in focus, but I really want the viewer to look here and not at their eyes on this shot. I probably did shoot this multiple ways with their eyes in focus as well, but I like this one the best. Same one with Sydney, but you saw the picture of her jumping with the sunset. I think before we did the jumping shot, we did this where my wife drew Senior 2017 on her shoes. And again, another shot where her eyes are not in focus, because that's not where I want you looking. So I've got her at f5, so you can still see her face. I don't want her to be completely blurred, but I still want you to focus on the shoes first and then travel over to her face. So one of the things that I try to explain to my clients is that we're not just hitting a button, right? We're thinking every time we take a shot. And as a photographer, I'm helping direct where I want your eyes to look, right? And I'm doing that by generally where I'm in focus or whatever is really bright in the frame. This shot's different because the two twins on either side were graduating, and that's their sister who's already in college in the middle. So this is taken at Santa Clara University, where the older sister goes to school, and I've got her sisters there with her, and they're all water polo players. So they have the water polo ball. Actually, this is the ball I brought them from the Olympics in Rio. They're good friends of ours. They had that ball, and so we took that with us and had them all hold it. And so it wasn't just the two of the seniors, it was them with their sister. And again, we have plenty of pictures of the two of them, and also individuals. My wife is a twin, very cognizant of the fact that twins also need to be individuals. So don't just photograph twins as twins, make sure you get individual shots of them as well. So we did that, then we threw the sister in as well. This is one we took at a local shopping area near our house, and we were doing senior pictures of this girl. This is toward the end of the day. My wife saw this window display and said, you know, it'd be really funny is to throw her in the window. So we went into the store and said, hey, any chance we could have her in with the mannequins? And they go, sure, why not? Just something different and fun. I turned it black and white, had to Photoshop a bunch of reflections out of the window, but it's still cool. Something different. Same girl in that same shopping area. This is just one of the loading doors for the trucks. And I thought, you know what? I like motion panning. I do it all the time when I'm shooting motorsports or the Olympics. What the heck? Let's try it with a senior. Never done that before. So we had her walking back and forth and just shot some motion pan shots. And this is literally, again, in front of a loading dock area. Reflections. I love reflections. This is taken in San Francisco, in Golden Gate Park, at one of the museums. And this area was picked by the family. This is where she grew up. It was a special place to them. So we went there. I hadn't shot senior portraits there. Loved it because it was somewhere new. Kept my brain fresh. But I saw this reflection and said, can you just come right up to the side there and just lean against there? And again, you'll see that I crossed her arms and just shot that. Kind of fun. Going back to our baseball player here, we were at the end of the day. We'd taken all of the senior portraits in his suit, in his baseball outfit. And then I said, you know what? Let's just try something different. And I grabbed a fisheye lens. This is a 15 millimeter fish. Put the fisheye lens on, started shooting. And then he pointed out to me, his name is on the baseball bat. That his family had actually created a couple bats for him that were personalized. I'm like, that's cool. So I changed my aperture to make it a little more narrow so I'd get both the name and him in focus so you could see it, and then shot that. And we had very cool sky at the time with those clouds. If it was a completely blue sky, it'd be a little more boring. But because we had these great clouds, it allowed me to get a shot like this. This is an on-camera flash. I'm actually using the mag mod to light it. So I did get the shadow across him. I'm okay with that. It still works, but it was kind of fun. Something different. And then I had him lean at the dugout and use the fisheye, which really makes his mitt look enormous, but it was kind of fun. And again, I'll take shots like this, and if they don't like it, I don't care, because they could just not pick them. But as it is, I think most of the people really appreciate the fact that we take it and go the extra mile and try to create something different. And they really enjoyed them. And of course, I like it. And then you have Peter, our one who wanted to be a little bit more edgy. And at the end of the shoot, Peter said to me, he goes, can we do jumping shots? And I'm like, yeah, as long as you don't break your leg, sure. And so he's on this wall and he's jumping. So I got this Canon 16 to 35. I got down really low. Now I shoot a lot of sports. I know that if you ever see the guys at the NFL games, they're always on their knees, because when you get down low, it makes everything look bigger. The football players look more, strong and powerful. Well, by getting down low, I was literally sitting on the ground shooting. It makes him look a lot higher. He wasn't that high. He was probably about maybe 3 feet off the ground or 4 feet off the ground when he jumped. But by getting down low with the wide angle lens, you can kind of magnify that. And so on camera flash, faster shutter speed to freeze it. And I just said, go ahead and jump, 1, 2, 3, and then fired off at the height of that jump.
Cool shadow there also.
It is cool. Yeah, the shadow in the background? Yeah, that wasn't planned. We did have the shadow in the back. That was not planned. I wish I could tell you I planned it, but it worked. Okay, after capturing the photos, one of the goals is to make sure your seniors look great. I really work hard to get rid of flyaway hairs. If they have acne, I will remove that on the images that they pick. If they have moles, that's who they are. I generally will leave those alone. If it bothers them, I can lighten them a little bit. Maybe do a clone at 50% just to put a little bit of skin color over them a little bit, but I try not to remove them. So I typically will take an image. The first thing I'll do is adjust exposure if it needs any slight tweaks. White balance changes if I need to go in either direction to warm it up or cool it down. I will tweak shadows and highlights. Either open the shadows if they're too dark, or if something's too bright, I'll bring that highlight slider down a little bit. And then I turn up the sharpness. Typically when I'm processing raw images, I've got sharpness turned to 87. That's my default. I'll remove distractions. If there's something in the background that's either too bright or just didn't fit in the frame, I'll try to take it out. But I only do that on the images I send them or that they've ordered. I don't do that when I go and give them a proof gallery because it'll take forever. Be careful when you're retouching that you don't under-retouch or over-retouch. And so if you look at some of my images that I shot a long time ago of seniors, I used a lot of that skin smoothing and stuff. I've really backed off of that. I think that sometimes some of it works well, but there's a point to where it looks too plasticky. So I've actually stepped away from that. I've actually had a couple clients say to me, I don't want any of it. I like my freckles. I'm like, okay, cool, good for you. The business of this senior portraits. One, you got to market early. So when they're all graduating in June timeframe, you don't want to be talking to them in May. Many of the schools in my area, they actually require that they have their photos for yearbook by October. So one of the reasons I just did a lot of those senior portraits in the last couple of weeks is for kids that go to that high school where they require them by October 15th, I think it was, that they have images for them for yearbook. So good time to market would be prior to that. July, August, September. Hey, get ready. You're now a senior. We'll want to do photos. So I'll do that through an email list, social media, where I'm pushing pictures of senior portraits, and then people go, oh, wait, shoot, my daughter needs one, or I need one. Reach out to friends and friends of friends to see. And so if you're in an area, like you were saying around here, where it's not prominent to do senior portraits, make it prominent. Go out there and say, because otherwise, if all they're getting is that fake black dress look, shot for the yearbook. But you talk about not being who they are. That's a good way not to do a senior portrait. I always tell people, let's do it right. Let's go out to the park. Let's go do it. So give them different options. Update your website with your best work, so you're showing off the senior portraits that you're doing, and keep it diverse. So, don't have all girls, don't have all guys, don't have all people of one ethnicity or whatever. I like to change it up. And I'll be honest with you, I've shot weddings for people who are very beautiful, and I've shot weddings for people who are not as beautiful. And you know what? That's okay, because that's the real world. And I've had people hire me because they said, I love the fact that on your wedding portfolio, you have people that are heavy set or not supermodels. That's a good thing to me, because, you look around the world, we're not all beautiful. Look at me. So, have diversity on your site. Hey, I know who I am. And then price it fairly, but keep profits in mind. So I still price it fairly. People think because I'm a 5-time Olympic photographer, it might be really expensive. I keep it really fair. But at the same time, I also keep it so it makes sense. I'm not going to go out and do senior portraits and spend 2.5 hours shooting for $50 on some Groupon, because it's not worth my time for $50 to go do it. Because I mentioned earlier, it's not just the shooting time. It's your prep, getting your cameras charged, your batteries charged for your flash. Then you go out, you go to location, you shoot. Your 2 hours is really 3 or 4. Then you get home, you have to go through your 700 images or whatever you took, build the gallery, post it to Zenfolio, email the client. Now we're 6 hours or whatever it is. So think about that as you're doing your pricing. Again, I can't give you advice exactly what to charge, but keep that all in mind. So what I do is I don't do packages, although I might start doing them. Right now, everything's a la carte. I'll charge $450 to go shoot for 2 hours for the session, and then they can buy the digitals or buy the prints from me afterwards. And I know many people in the San Francisco Bay Area who are making $2,000 to $3,000 on a senior portrait shoot because they're buying a lot. We'll talk about that here in a second. The other thing you want to do is get images to the seniors to share. If you want to market yourself, do a great senior portrait session for a senior for free, and say, I'll do it for free if you tell your friends about it. Or in my case, I do a lot of them. I don't have to do them for free anymore, but I'll tell them, hey, I'm going to send you some images tonight that we just shot for you to share with your friends. Pretty smart. Of course, every one of them has my watermark on it that says Jeff Cable Photography. So they post that, it goes out there, and I say, I'm gonna give you some of these to share. I'd really appreciate it if you could include my, say these are taken by Jeff Cable Photography. Well, who sees it? These kids are all living on social media, and they got 1,000 friends. Well, then their friends see it and say, oh wait, that's a really beautiful shot. I want one like that. Because what are we used to today? We're used to iPhone shots or your cell phone shots with a really wide lens and not the best images. And so these kids are very used to selfies because that's the society we're in, but they're not really used to seeing high quality images. So they're kind of like, when I turn the camera around and show them, they're like, oh wow. Because they've gotten used to mediocrity just because that's what we have in our pockets all the time. And this is a way to kind of take that to the next level. So I always share with them, at least, if not that night, the next day, I'll get them at least 3 or 4 of my favorite shots for them to share. And I will tell you that when I do that, inevitably I'll get an email or a phone call from one of their friends saying that they'd like to do it as well. The other thing is make sure you format those for social media. Instagram tends to be square. You don't want them cropping off your logo because it was up in the corner. I've had that happen. And they post a square. So you could give them different options. Here's a square for social media. Here's a more rectangular one for Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And so think about that for them. And deliver quickly. Anybody who knows my workflow knows that I deliver fast. My Olympic deadlines are 14 minutes, so I'm used to working very fast. But when I shoot something, I always post the next day. No matter how busy I am, unless I'm traveling, always the next day. And I do that because I want to exceed expectations for my client, and I want them to be able to see them right away, and also I want them to be able to order right away. As I already mentioned, incentivize your seniors to tell friends, not only by giving them images for social media, but you can actually do a referral program and say, tell you what, anybody, someone's got a springboard in the back, anybody who's, if you tell your friends, I'll give you a $25 fee, or a finder fee for everybody you tell. To a senior in high school, they'll take that money. So that's one way to do it as well. And then, as I mentioned, there's a lot of photographers who make a lot of money doing senior portraits by selling books, digitals, prints, canvases, what have you. And we've done metal prints for clients through Bay Photo. We've done a couple books, but a lot of prints and a lot of digitals. Okay, this is just if you want to learn more from me. These are the upcoming photo tours that we have, and there's a lot. We have Costa Rica in 3 weeks. We have Japan in April of 18, Namibia and Botswana in June, July. Costa Rica again in August of 18. Then Croatia and Slovenia in September. And then we have Tanzania January, that one's already sold out. But February is open. We just opened up another one. If you have not been to Africa, you got to go because that's a life-changing, really great trip. And then also another trip to Tanzania in August, which is the migration, not the reverse migration. So a little different look. So, and all these are on my website, and it's constantly changing. I believe India is we're about to announce India, and that's going to go up in the next couple days. So you can go to my website and just go to photo tours, and it'll be up there. And if you want to get a hold of me, this is the way to do it. And I answer every email that everybody sends. Look, he's shaking his head. I do. I answer every email I get. No. Yes, I do, except for yours. I don't answer Carol's. I do. JCable at jeffcable.com, and both Facebook and Instagram, it's just Jeff Cable Photography. And that's where I post all my stuff. When I'm traveling, I always post images from when I'm traveling. And at the Olympics, I do this every day, what I shot, how I shot it. The blog, for those of you who are not reading the blog, it's just blog.jeffcable.com. I blog once a week, and I will blog, on, again, different things, whether it's where I'm traveling, what I'm doing, different techniques, technical things, reviews of cameras, whatever. And then the website, which is jeffcable.com. With all that said, everybody learning something, hopefully? Cool? Good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You guys go on the show now? Tomorrow.